not only to service in the military, but to these particular guys. Can you talk to us just briefly about the connection that you developed with the people that you were really working with?
Well, let me put it to you this way, Gene. There are airborne infantry grunts with wings on their chests that call me brother, because I went out there with them and ate their MREs and their crappy food and lived in the dirt and assumed all the risks and crossed the line into a war zone. And I love them. And I say this, unabashedly. I love them only an older brother can. If you go through that kind of stress with people and you share the risks and everything that goes with it, there's a bond. Shakespeare wrote about this, we eternal band of brothers, and there's no other way to describe it. In some ways, I'm closer to them than I am to my own blood brothers. And I've been given status as an honorary member of Bravo Company, call themselves the Nasty Boys of the 2nd Battalion, 325th Airborne Infantry Regiment, and that's the greatest professional honor I've ever gotten in my life. No matter what award you win, if somebody in an infantry company calls you brother, there's nothing that can eclipse that. So yeah, there is a bond, there's an understanding, there's an empathy, there's an appreciation, and I say it's an undying respect, but respect is just love in plain clothes. I love these guys. I just happen to hate that they have to be in the business that they're in.
Absolutely, I totally agree with that. And that's a bond that few of us can say that they have. And one of the accomplishments, and what a great book this is. I keep saying I can't wait to read it. Drive On: The Uncensored War of Bedouin Bob and the All Americans. It's available on Amazon and where finer books are sold. You can also check out Bob at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, doing some great work over there. Also, the Jerry Sandusky book that you wrote, Game Over, pick that up as well. And catch him on Twitter at BedouinBob82. Bob, this was a great interview. Thank you so much for doing this. We really appreciate it, and good luck with the book.
I really enjoyed doing it. It's a pleasure to talk with somebody who really knows what they're talking about, and it gets to the meat of the issue without getting into all the other things. So this was a book I had to write. This was something I've been carrying around with me for 26 years. I just wanted to get it off my chest, and I think it's as pertinent today as it was back then. And
we're so glad that you did, Bob. Thank you so much for coming on. We'll talk to you real soon.
Have me on anytime. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey folks, I just want to let you know about a great opportunity for listeners of Behind Enemy Lines Radio. If you go to our website, www.behindenemylines.radio.us, and click on the Sane Box ad on the right side of the page, you will get a great opportunity for a discounted offer to join SaneBox. SaneBox filters out all the unimportant email from your inbox so that you can really focus on what matters. If you're anything like me, folks, you get hundreds of pieces of email a day, not many of which is important. SaneBox's smart filter will get everything you need to fly through your inbox and finally make email work for you. It gets rid of spam emails, it deprioritizes emails that aren't as important to you, and it helps you unsubscribe from mailing lists and individual senders with ease. So again, go to www.behindenemylinesradio.us and you click on the SaneBox ad and you'll be given an exclusive offer you won't find anywhere else. The show will be right back. But first, a word from Al Sharpton.
Good evening, Rev. Thanks to you, Ed. Is this Groundhog Day 2? We are watching that was Attorney General Eric Holder, ABDs, about some Republicans at home are already beating the drums of war. Today, the Pentagon refuted that claim. And he said the American people do not want him to, quote, dwiddling, they do not want him dwiddling his thumbs. You can get a gig as a contortionist. Intravenous fluids and pills coated with gelatin. We don't leave our women or men in uniform behind. It's a monument to the hubris of Dick Cheney. Representative Raul Labrador. Years of abuse. I personally apologize to Mr. Peebles. Just ask to soon-to-be former Congressman. Democrats are outright jitty. CIA's Counterterrorism Center. Veteran Affairs Secretary Shinseki. Why do I always mess up his name? Shinseki. I love my critics. I have fun with that.
Politics Nation with the Reverend Al Sharpton starts right now. Good evening, Rev.
Good evening, Dr. Dyson.
But wait, there's more.
And we will much about that be committed. So there's no real conflict. Michael Druniak, including Lincoln himself, Daniel Day-Lewis. Behind Monica Lewinsky, the one and only Trey Songz is here. But Allison Lundergan Grimes, Gina De Jesus, when Gina De Jesus, Tea Party challenger Matt Bivens. People don't want to have their Social Security overall. The Republican savior, Mark Rubio's big night in evolution and Galileo. I mean, this whole thing of Galileo. America's changed. Unless IT and Skillets, President Putin doing something similar back in, it won't change this fundamental fact about the GOP. Just how absurd these attacks is. Nearly 6 months after the dangerous traffic jam, the Thai military says, my friend for many years, Ilyana Van Zandt, there's nothing there.
And they gave this guy a TV show? Let's get back to our show.
Gene Baradelli, back behind enemy lines. Joining me on the line right now. It wouldn't be a show if I didn't get to talk to another attorney. She is an expert in university Title IX cases and is actively combating university bias in these matters, and recently published an article in the Daily Caller talking about how campus zealots, and that is not an exaggeration, folks, are using a biased system and are taking away students' due process rights. We're talking to attorney Michelle Owens. Michelle, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Like I said, it's always great to talk. It's always great to talk shop with another attorney. And we were off air just previously discussing how these Title IX cases are actually becoming a specialty in the field. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, sadly. I mean, I wish that wasn't the case, and I'm actively fighting to diminish this part of my practice by changing what the law is and the way that the procedures are run. But right now, it's almost taken over my practice because there are so many of these cases coming forward. Right.
So let's briefly explain what these Title IX cases are and how they developed.
Sure. Well, it's there's always been Title IX, and people, I'm at the higher end of 40, but people my age, kind of think of Title IX as something to do with sports. Equal opportunities for girls in sports.
Exactly right.
And that's what it was intended to. Yeah, that's what it was intended to do. Discrimination, prevent that. Well, somehow it has developed into rape being a discriminatory act, and to me, that is mind-blowing in and of itself. But back in 2011, and stop me if I get too technical, but back in 2011, the Department of Education has within it an Office of Civil Rights, and they wrote something called the Dear Colleague Letter. And unless you're in this field, you think, so what? What's a Dear Colleague Letter? Well, it's something that gives instruction on universities on how to handle Title IX sexual assault cases. And they've kind of developed this whole protocol for how universities are required to handle sexual assault and sexual harassment. And I think it started because, there probably was a problem. And rape is a real thing. I mean, I know people who have been raped on college campuses, and it's a real thing, and it does need to be handled effectively. But, at one university right now, there are 30 Title IX cases coming across the Title IX desk a week. There are not 30 rapes at that college every week. That is asinine to think that. So this letter developed, and cut me off anytime because you know I'm a lawyer and I'll just keep talking. But
no, you're on a roll. Keep going. You're on a roll.
This letter, because I hate it, it makes me so mad. This letter requires that every college have a Title IX coordinator, and they find these people who are about 27 years old. They're always female, and they have their own personal agenda. And even if you go to a really conservative school, if you dig into the Title IX coordinator, they're very liberal, and they're feminist, and, you know, and there's a place for that, but this is not it. Because what happens is these boys get accused of sexual assault, come in, and they're faced with someone with their own personal agenda. You know, maybe they've been victimized, or they feel like they have been. So they're thought of as guilty from the get-go. But what this dear colleague letter did is it changed several things, and it changed the standard of review to preponderance of the evidence, which there's not, you know, in law school they teach you kind of, there's no really definition of this, but it's basically, I believe the girl a little bit more than the boy, and that's the definition of guilt.
Right, and for those of you out there that may not, and for those of listeners out there who may not understand what that means, think about, you know, a typical, you know, just in your everyday life, like a car accident or some other minor thing where there's an injury. You only have to get like level, and for something as serious as a sexual crimes alleging to happen, that is a very low bar.
Well, yeah, it basically means that y'all are almost even, we don't know who to believe, but we're going to go with the girl. I mean, really? That's how it works? What I'd like to do is tell you kind of what a normal interview and allegation looks like from the point of the accused.
Absolutely, go ahead.
That kind of outlines how the Dear Colleague letter established that these things need to be handled. So what happens is, and it's always a boy. I've heard of one case right now of a girl, and I think if girls start getting accused, it might change the story a little bit, but it's always a male, and they get a letter via email from their university that says you've been accused of, and it has a box check, sexual assault or sexual harassment. You don't know what it is. The only thing you know for sure as the accused student is the girl that accused you. You don't know when she accused you. A lot of times these are relationships these people have had, and almost always the relationship has ended months before. I have one that was 18 months in the past. So you think back 2 years, you're like, when did she say I either assaulted her or harassed her? So you don't know when, you don't know what the specific event was, and then you're told that you have to defend yourself against it. And imagine trying to defend yourself against something that you don't know what it is. I mean, what, you know, I could defend myself a lot better if I knew what it was. And then you're told you can't have a lawyer present to help you. Now, obviously, this is what I do, so I do come into play, but I kind of am the Wizard of Oz behind the scenes, and I interview all the witnesses first, and I help these 19-year-old witnesses and the college students, you know, tell their story better.
How is it that they can deny? How is it that they can deny someone a right to counsel?
Because these universities are their own little fiefdoms, and they are not required by law to provide counsel for somebody. You know, legally, and you know this, you're not really required to be provided counsel unless it's a criminal act. Now, to deny you the right to even have an attorney is very specific to the universities and to this Dear Colleague letter. And that's the due process issue that a lot of attorneys are challenging, because they are depriving you liberty, even though there's an argument that they're not. But especially with the state colleges, which brings the state into play and the federal government into play, it is the point is that it is depriving you of liberty in which you should have due process. So how can they do it? I wish I knew.
Right, and this is like a pseudo-criminal issue, because you're not... Are there instances where there are these charges brought, let's call them charges for now, because I can't think of any other word for it, where these charges are brought, but there is no police involvement brought in, so there's like no arrest or no police investigation?
Yeah, I guess I should have started with that. I've never had one that the police was involved in. These women don't go to the police. If I was raped, I'm going to the police, because what I want is the guy behind bars. I don't want him just kicked out of school. I mean, really? So no, the police are never involved. And you know what? On cases where the police are involved, they are found innocent, the accused is, it doesn't matter to the school. They still proceed as if that hadn't happened. They do their own